Commander Elena Vasquez stood at the observation deck of the Mars Transit Station, her weathered hands pressed against the reinforced glass as she watched the construction crews finish the final assembly of the Prometheus Dawn. The massive spacecraft gleamed under the artificial lights, its sleek hull reflecting the red glow of Mars hanging in the distance. At 45, Elena had spent half her life preparing for this moment, and now humanity's most ambitious mission was finally becoming reality. The year was 2087, and Earth's population had reached critical levels. Climate change had forced billions to relocate, and, despite advances in renewable energy and vertical farming, resources were stretched thin. The discovery of methane lakes and organic compounds on Titan 15 years earlier had sparked hope for humanity's expansion beyond the inner solar system. Now, Elena would lead the first permanent settlement mission to Saturn's largest moon. "Commander, the final systems check is complete," announced Dr. James Chen, her chief engineer, as he approached with a data tablet. His voice carried the exhaustion of months of preparation, but his eyes sparkled with the same excitement that had driven them all through the grueling training program. All 60 crew members have passed their final medical evaluations, and the cargo manifests are locked in. Elena nodded, her mind already running through the countless details that could determine the success or failure of their mission. The Prometheus Dawn wasn't just a spacecraft, it was a complete colony ship carrying everything needed to establish humanity's first permanent outpost in the outer solar system. Fusion reactors, atmospheric processors, hydroponic farms, mining equipment, 3D molecular printers, and enough supplies to sustain them for 10 years if necessary. "What about the new recruits from the Luna Academy?" Elena asked, referring to the 12 young specialists who had graduated from the prestigious Space Academy on the Moon. These individuals represented the best and brightest of their generation, trained specifically for deep space colonization missions. "They're eager and well-prepared," James replied. Dr. Sarah Kim, the xenobiologist, hasn't stopped talking about the potential for discovering life in Titan's subsurface ocean. And Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez, our pilot, has been running navigation simulations non-stop for the past month. Elena smiled slightly. She remembered that same burning curiosity from her own early days as an astronaut. She had started her career on the International Space Station 2.0, then moved to the lunar mining operations, and later commanded the first manned mission to Europa. Each assignment had been a stepping stone toward this ultimate challenge. The journey to Titan would take 18 months using the new fusion drive technology. Unlike the chemical rockets of the early space age, their ship could maintain constant acceleration for months, cutting travel time in half compared to traditional trajectories. But 18 months in deep space, even with artificial gravity and extensive recreation facilities, would test every crew member's psychological limits. "Tell me about the geological surveys," Elena said as they walked toward the ship's docking bay. The sounds of final preparations echoed through the corridors, welding torches, mechanical lifts moving cargo, and the constant chatter of technicians conducting last-minute checks. The orbital probes confirm massive deposits of water ice and hydrocarbons near the landing site, James explained, pulling up holographic displays on his tablet. "The location we've chosen is near Kraken Mare, the largest methane sea on Titan. The subsurface ocean is only about 50 kilometers down, which makes it accessible for our deep drilling equipment." Elena studied the data with practiced eyes. The success of their mission depended on their ability to extract and process local resources. Earth could send supply ships, but the logistics were enormously expensive and time-consuming. Self-sufficiency was not just a goal, it was a necessity for long-term survival. "What about the radiation shielding?" she asked, knowing this was one of their most critical concerns. Unlike Mars, which at least had a thin atmosphere, Titan orbited within Saturn's intense radiation belt. "The ship's magnetic field generators are operating at full capacity," James assured her. "And the colony domes are designed with triple redundant shielding. We've also identified several cave systems that could serve as natural radiation shelters." As they entered the ship's command center, Elena felt the familiar mix of anticipation and responsibility that came with command. The bridge was a marvel of human engineering, with holographic displays showing real-time data from across the solar system. Navigation charts, resource inventories, crew health monitors, and communication links with Earth all competed for screen space.
"Commander on deck," announced Lieutenant Rodriguez as Elena entered.
The young pilot stood at attention, his dark eyes bright with enthusiasm. Behind him, the rest of the senior staff had assembled for their final briefing before departure. "At ease, everyone," Elena said, taking her position at the central command console. "In 6 hours, we'll begin our journey to humanity's new frontier. Each of you has trained for years for this mission, and I have complete confidence in your abilities." Dr. Kim, the xenobiologist, leaned forward eagerly. "Commander, the latest spectral analysis from our advanced probes detected complex organic molecules in Titan's atmosphere. There's a real possibility we might discover microbial life in the subsurface ocean." Elena nodded thoughtfully. The discovery of life beyond Earth would be momentous, but it also raised complex questions about human colonization. "Our primary mission is to establish a sustainable human presence on Titan," she reminded them. "But if we do encounter life, we'll follow all protocols for study and protection." Engineer Thompson, a veteran of the asteroid mining operations, raised his hand. "What's our backup plan if the fusion reactors experience problems during the journey?" "We have redundant systems and enough fuel cells to maintain life support for 6 months," Elena replied. "Additionally, the ship is equipped with solar collection arrays that can provide minimal power once we reach Saturn's system." Communications Officer Davis spoke up next. "Earth Command wants to establish regular communication windows. Given the distance, signal delay will be between 1 to 2 hours depending on planetary alignment." Elena appreciated the thoroughness of her crew's questions. These details mattered enormously when operating millions of kilometers from Earth with no possibility of immediate rescue or resupply. "What about psychological support?" asked Dr. Emma Watson, the mission's psychologist and medical officer. 18 months in confined space, followed by years of isolation on Titan, will challenge everyone's mental health. "We have comprehensive recreation and exercise programs," Elena answered. "Plus virtual reality systems that can simulate Earth environments. And, remember, we're not just surviving out there, we're building something new. That sense of purpose will help sustain morale." As the briefing continued, Elena felt a familiar stirring of pride in humanity's achievements. A century earlier, humans had barely managed to reach their own moon. Now they were preparing to establish permanent settlements in the outer solar system. Each generation pushed further into the cosmos, driven by an irrepressible urge to explore and expand. "The supply chain from Earth will begin 6 months after our arrival," she continued. "Additional crew rotations, advanced equipment, and luxury items to improve quality of life. But, make no mistake, for the first 2 years, we're essentially on our own." The weight of responsibility was immense. 60 human lives depended on her leadership, and the future of interplanetary colonization might hinge on their mission's success. If they failed, it could set back human expansion by decades. If they succeeded, they would open the door for thousands of colonists to follow. "Any final questions?" Elena asked, scanning the faces of her senior staff. She saw determination, excitement, and just enough nervousness to keep them sharp. These were exactly the people she wanted beside her on humanity's greatest adventure. "When do we tell the crew about the classified cargo?" whispered James, referring to the experimental terraforming equipment hidden in the ship's lower decks. The technology was still unproven, but it offered the possibility of eventually creating breathable atmosphere within enclosed spaces on Titan. "After we've established the initial base," Elena replied quietly. "Let's focus on survival first, then we can start dreaming about transformation." As the meeting dispersed, Elena remained on the bridge, staring at the star charts showing their planned trajectory. The journey ahead would test every aspect of human ingenuity, courage, and determination. But she had absolute faith in her crew and in humanity's ability to adapt and thrive in any environment. The Prometheus Dawn represented more than just a mission, it was a statement about human nature itself. Despite all the challenges facing Earth, despite the enormous risks and costs involved, humans continued to reach for the stars. That drive, that refusal to accept limitations, had carried them from caves to cities to space stations to the edge of the solar system. Soon, they would take the next step into the vast unknown, carrying with them the hopes and dreams of an entire species. 14 months into their journey, Commander Elena Vasquez floated in the observation lounge, watching Saturn grow larger in the viewport with each passing day. The massive planet's rings created a spectacular light show against the black of space, but Elena's mind was focused on the challenges that lay ahead. The Prometheus Dawn had performed flawlessly during their long voyage, but the real test would begin when they entered Titan's atmosphere. "Commander, we're receiving the latest weather data from our advanced probes," announced Dr. Kim over the ship's communication system. "There's a massive methane storm system moving across our primary landing zone. We might need to consider the backup site." Elena pushed off from the observation window and glided through the ship's corridors toward the command center. After more than a year in space, the crew had adapted remarkably well to life aboard the ship. The artificial gravity created by the ship's rotation helped maintain their physical health, while the extensive recreation facilities and virtual reality systems had prevented the psychological breakdown that had plagued earlier long-duration missions. The ship itself had become a small city, with specialized sections for different functions. The agricultural bays were producing fresh vegetables and fruits that supplemented their stored rations. The workshop areas hummed with activity as crew members manufactured tools and spare parts using the ship's advanced 3D printing systems. Most importantly, the crew had bonded into a cohesive team ready to face the challenges of establishing a new world. "Show me the storm data," Elena said as she entered the command center and strapped herself into her command chair. The bridge's holographic displays immediately shifted to show Titan's surface conditions. Massive orange and brown clouds swirled across the moon's face, carrying winds that could reach speeds of over 200 kilometers per hour. Lieutenant Rodriguez, who had grown confident and skilled during their journey, manipulated the display controls. "The storm covers about 300,000 square kilometers and shows no signs of dissipating. Our weather models suggest it could last another 2 weeks." Elena studied the patterns carefully. The backup landing site was located near the edge of Ligeia Mare, another of Titan's methane seas. While it offered similar resource opportunities, the terrain was more challenging, with steep cliffs and unstable ground conditions. "What's the status of our landing craft?" she asked Engineer Thompson, who had spent months modifying their shuttles for Titan's unique conditions. "All 3 landers are ready for deployment," Thompson replied proudly. "We've upgraded the heat shields for the thick atmosphere entry, and the landing systems are designed to handle both solid ground and liquid methane surfaces. The atmospheric processors are online, and the habitat modules are fully tested." Dr. Watson, the mission psychologist, leaned forward from her station. "Commander, the crew is eager to get planetside. Morale is high, but there's underlying tension about the landing. Everyone knows this is the moment that determines our success or failure." Elena nodded. She felt that same tension herself. Everything they had trained for, everything humanity had invested in this mission, would be decided in the next few days. The landing on Titan would be unlike anything humans had attempted before. The moon's thick atmosphere created unique challenges, but it also offered opportunities. Unlike the airless worlds humans had previously explored, Titan had weather, seasonal changes, and a complex chemistry that could support human life with the right technology. "Dr. Kim, what's the latest on your biological surveys?" Elena asked, knowing that the xenobiologist had been analyzing data from their orbital probes throughout the journey. "The subsurface ocean shows remarkable chemical complexity," Dr. Kim replied excitedly. "We've detected sulfur compounds, nitrogen-based molecules, and what appear to be complex organic chains. The temperature and pressure conditions in the ocean could support microbial life." Elena felt a surge of excitement mixed with caution. The discovery of life would be scientifically revolutionary, but it would also complicate their colonization efforts. Earth's environmental protection protocols required extensive study and safeguards before establishing permanent human presence near potential life sites. "Communications, what's our status with Earth?" Elena asked Officer Davis, knowing that their increasing distance from Earth was stretching communication times to nearly 2 hours each way. "We transmitted our arrival status 6 hours ago," Davis replied. "Earth Command should receive it in about 90 minutes.
They've been sending regular updates on the follow-up missions.
3 more colony ships are in final preparation stages, and the first cargo vessels loaded with heavy industrial equipment departed last month. The knowledge that others would follow provided both comfort and pressure. If their mission failed, it would delay humanity's expansion into the outer solar system by years. If they succeeded, they would pave the way for thousands of colonists to build new lives among Saturn's moons. "Alright, let's make the final decision on our landing site," Elena announced. "I want recommendations from each department head within 6 hours. Consider all factors: resource access, safety, scientific opportunities, and long-term expansion potential." As the senior staff dispersed to their various duties, Elena remained on the bridge with Lieutenant Rodriguez, studying the detailed surface maps they had compiled over months of orbital observation. Titan was a world of wonders: lakes and seas of liquid methane, mountains of water ice harder than steel in the frigid temperatures, and vast plains covered with hydrocarbon dunes.
"What do you think, Marcus?" Elena asked the young pilot, using his first name in a moment of informal consultation. "Where would you want to build humanity's first city in the outer solar system?" Rodriguez studied the displays thoughtfully.
"The backup site near Ligeia Mare offers better protection from the seasonal storms," he said slowly. "And the subsurface geology suggests extensive cave systems that could provide natural shelter and expansion space. It's riskier for the initial landing, but it might be better for long-term settlement."
Elena appreciated his thoughtful analysis.
During their journey, she had watched the young crew members mature into experienced space professionals.
The challenges of deep space travel had forged them into a team capable of tackling any obstacle.
"Commander," interrupted Engineer Thompson over the communication system, "I'm getting some unusual readings from the advance probe near the backup landing site.
The subsurface scans are showing what looks like artificial structures." Elena felt her pulse quicken. "Artificial? You mean manufactured by intelligence?"
"I'm not certain," Thompson replied carefully. "The patterns are too regular to be natural geological formations, but they could be the result of some unknown chemical process."
"I recommend we send a detailed reconnaissance mission before committing to landing." Elena made a quick decision. "Deploy probe Delta 7 for a closer examination."
"I want high-resolution imaging and full spectral analysis. If there's any possibility of existing structures, we need to know before we set foot on the surface."
The next several hours passed in tense anticipation as the probe descended toward Titan's surface.
The crew gathered in the observation lounges to watch the real-time transmission as the probe's cameras revealed the alien landscape below. Through the thick orange atmosphere, they could see the dark surface of Ligeia Mare stretching to the horizon, its methane waves lapping against shores of organic sand. There, Dr. Kim pointed at the display as the probe's cameras focused on a series of regular formations near the shoreline.
"Those structures are definitely not natural. The geometric patterns are too precise." Elena stared at the images in amazement.
The structures appeared to be made of the same organic materials found throughout Titan's surface, but they were arranged in complex, interlocking patterns that suggested purposeful construction. Some were several meters tall, arranged in spiraling configurations that caught and channeled the wind patterns above the methane sea.
"Could they be the result of some kind of life form?" asked Dr. Watson, voicing the question that was on everyone's mind.
"It's possible," Dr. Kim replied slowly.
"But they could also be the result of complex chemical processes we don't yet understand. Titan's surface chemistry is unlike anything we've encountered before."
Elena knew they were facing a decision that would define the future of human expansion into the outer solar system. If the structures were evidence of life, even non-intelligent life, they would need to proceed with extreme caution. If they were simply the result of unknown chemical processes, they represented a fascinating scientific opportunity.
"Launch a second probe for detailed chemical analysis," she ordered.
"I want to know the composition of those structures and any associated organic compounds. We need to understand what we're dealing with before we make our final landing decision." As the second probe descended toward Titan's surface, Elena realized that their mission had already exceeded all expectations. Whether the structures were biological, chemical, or something entirely new, they had discovered something unprecedented in the outer solar system. The implications for human understanding of life and chemistry were staggering. "Commander," Lieutenant Rodriguez said quietly, "regardless of what those structures are, we still need to establish our colony.
Humanity needs this foothold in the outer solar system." Elena nodded, understanding the weight of his words.
They had come too far and invested too much to turn back now. Whatever they found on Titan's surface, they would find a way to coexist with it while building humanity's future among the stars. The probe's analysis would take several more hours, but Elena already knew they would proceed with the landing. The discovery of unusual structures only reinforced the importance of establishing a human presence on Titan. Whether they were studying new forms of life, unknown chemical processes, or something else entirely, human scientists needed to be there to understand and learn. As she floated in the command center, watching the data stream from their probes, Elena felt the profound responsibility of her position. She was not just commanding a space mission, she was leading humanity's first steps into a larger, more complex universe than they had ever imagined. 3 years had passed since Commander Elena Vasquez first set foot on Titan's frozen surface, and the small human outpost had grown into a thriving settlement. New Prometheus Base now housed over 200 colonists, with additional ships arriving every 6 months carrying supplies, equipment, and fresh personnel eager to build new lives in the outer solar system. Elena stood in the observation dome of the main habitat complex, watching the sunrise paint Titan's methane atmosphere in brilliant shades of orange and gold. In the distance, she could see the mining operations extracting water ice and organic compounds from the subsurface deposits. Closer to the base, agricultural domes were producing fresh food that supplemented the supplies from Earth, while manufacturing facilities created tools, equipment, and even luxury items using local materials. The mysterious structures they had discovered during their initial reconnaissance had proven to be the result of complex chemical processes unique to Titan's environment. While not evidence of life, they represented a new form of self-organizing chemistry that had revolutionized human understanding of planetary formation and evolution. Dr. Kim had published 17 research papers based on her studies of these formations, making her one of the most famous scientists in the solar system. "Commander, the morning briefing is ready," announced Captain Martinez, Elena's second-in-command who had arrived with the third supply mission. The young officer had adapted quickly to life on Titan and had proven invaluable in managing the growing complexity of the settlement. Elena made her way through the interconnected habitat modules to the command center, where her senior staff had assembled for their daily planning session. The center hummed with activity as personnel monitored everything from atmospheric processors to deep drilling operations to the communication arrays that kept them connected to Earth and the growing network of human settlements throughout the solar system. "What's our status report?" Elena asked as she took her seat at the conference table. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see Titan's landscape stretching toward the horizon, where the dark surface of Ligeia Mare reflected Saturn's pale light. Dr. Kim, now the settlement's chief science officer, consulted her data displays. "The subsurface ocean exploration is exceeding all expectations. Our robotic probes have mapped over 500 square kilometers of the ocean floor, and we've discovered thermal vents that could support complex chemistry. Still no definitive signs of life, but the chemical diversity is remarkable." Engineer Thompson, who had been promoted to Director of Operations, added his report. "The fusion reactors are operating at 98% efficiency, and our manufacturing capabilities have expanded significantly. We're now producing 75% of our basic equipment locally, including electronics and mechanical components." Elena felt pride in their achievements. The transition from a simple survival outpost to a self-sustaining settlement had been challenging, but the colonists had risen to every obstacle. They had learned to work with Titan's unique environment rather than fighting against it, developing new technologies and techniques that would benefit future settlements throughout the outer solar system. "What about the new arrivals from the Luna Academy?" Elena asked, referring to the 20 young specialists who had arrived on the most recent supply ship. These newest colonists represented the second generation of outer system settlers, trained from childhood for life in the frontier environments beyond Mars. "They're adapting well," replied Dr. Watson, now the settlement's Director of Personnel and Psychological Services. "There's remarkable enthusiasm for the expansion projects, particularly the planned establishment of satellite settlements around other Saturnian moons.
Elena nodded with satisfaction.
The success of New Prometheus base had validated humanity's expansion strategy, and plans were already underway for permanent settlements on Enceladus, Europa, and several of Jupiter's smaller moons.
Each new settlement would build on the lessons learned from their experiences on Titan. Communication status?
Elena asked Officer Davis, who had chosen to extend his tour of duty indefinitely and had become the settlement's primary link with Earth and the rest of human civilization. We've established regular contact with the Mars Transit Station, the Luna Academy, and Earth Command, Davis reported. The communication delay is now averaging 95 minutes each way, but the quantum entanglement transmitters on the new ships should reduce that significantly.
More importantly, we're serving as a relay station for missions deeper into the outer system. Elena felt a surge of pride at that last point.
New Prometheus base was no longer just an isolated outpost, it had become a crucial hub in humanity's expanding interplanetary network. Ships bound for Uranus and Neptune now stopped at Titan for refueling and resupply, making the settlement a vital part of human expansion into the outer solar system.
What about the terraforming experiments?
Elena asked, referring to the classified project that had been revealed during their second year on Titan. Engineer Thompson's eyes lit up with enthusiasm.
We've successfully created a breathable atmosphere within the experimental dome.
The atmospheric processors are converting methane and nitrogen into oxygen at a rate that could support a 50-person habitat without life support systems. If we can scale up the technology, we could eventually create breathable environments across significant portions of Titan's surface. Elena marveled at how far they had come. The experimental terraforming technology represented humanity's first serious attempt at planetary engineering on such a scale. If successful, it could transform Titan from a hostile frontier world into a genuinely habitable planet for human civilization.
Any word on the deep space exploration missions? Elena asked, knowing that their success on Titan had encouraged even more ambitious projects. Captain Martinez consulted his latest reports from Earth. The first unmanned probes to Proxima Centauri are in final preparation.
And there's talk of sending a generation ship to Wolf 359 within the next 20 years.
Our success here has proved that humans can build sustainable civilizations anywhere in the universe.
Elena felt the weight and wonder of that realization. When she had first gazed at Saturn's rings from the observation deck of the Mars Transit Station, she had been thinking about establishing a small outpost for scientific research and resource extraction. Instead, they had built the foundation for humanity's expansion to the stars themselves.
I have an announcement to make, Elena said, looking around the table at the faces of people who had become not just colleagues but family during their years together on Titan.
Earth Command has offered me the position of director of the new Deep Space Colonization Authority. It's a chance to help plan and coordinate humanity's expansion throughout the local stellar neighborhood.
The room fell silent as her staff absorbed the implications.
Elena continued, I've decided to accept the position, but I'll be maintaining my primary residence here on Titan. This settlement will serve as the headquarters for deep space operations, making New Prometheus base the capital of humanity's stellar expansion. Cheers erupted around the table as her staff realized what this meant. Titan would become the launching point for missions to other star systems, cementing its position as one of the most important worlds in human civilization. When do we start preparing for interstellar operations? Asked Dr. Kim, her scientific curiosity already engaged by the possibilities.
The first-generation ship crews will begin training here next year, Elena replied. We'll use Titan as a testing ground for closed-loop life support systems and multi-generational social structures. Everything we've learned about building sustainable communities in hostile environments will be crucial for ships that might travel for decades or centuries.
Elena stood and walked to the observation window, looking out at the settlement they had built from nothing. In the distance, she could see construction crews working on the new habitats that would house the interstellar mission specialists.
Agricultural domes were expanding to test the food production systems for generation ships.
And, in orbit around Titan, space docks were being built to service the massive vessels that would carry humanity to the stars. You know, she said thoughtfully, when we first landed on Titan, I thought our goal was simply to establish a human presence in the outer solar system. But we've done something much more significant. We've proved that humanity can adapt to any environment, overcome any challenge, and build thriving communities anywhere in the universe."
Dr. Watson nodded from her position at the table.
"The psychological profiles from our colonists show remarkable adaptation and resilience. The people here aren't just surviving, they're thriving in ways that would have been impossible on Earth." Engineer Thompson added, "The technologies we've developed for living on Titan will revolutionize life throughout the solar system. Our atmospheric processors, our closed-loop manufacturing systems, our fusion reactors, all of these innovations are already being implemented on other worlds." Elena felt a deep sense of satisfaction as she watched a transport shuttle descend through Titan's orange atmosphere, carrying the latest group of colonists to their new home. Each arrival brought new skills, new perspectives, and new dreams of what humanity could accomplish among the stars. "The universe is vast beyond imagination," she said to her assembled staff. "And, for the first time in human history, we have the technology and the knowledge to explore it. What we've built here on Titan is just the beginning. In 100 years, there will be human settlements around dozens of stars. In 1,000 years, humanity will be a truly galactic civilization." As the day shift began their work throughout New Prometheus Base, Elena remained in the observation dome, contemplating the journey that had brought them to this moment. From a small research outpost struggling to survive in an alien environment, they had built the foundation for humanity's expansion to the stars. The challenges ahead would be enormous, but she had absolute confidence in humanity's ability to overcome any obstacle. Titan's methane winds whispered across the settlement's protective domes, carrying with them the promise of adventures yet to come and worlds yet to be discovered. Humanity had taken its next great step into the cosmos, and there would be no turning back from the magnificent future that awaited them among the stars.